Welcome everyone to the 9th Annamani lecture, which is going to be delivered by Dr. Jayasree Subramanian from SRM AP University. The Annamani lecture series is part of an ongoing effort by the Working Group for Gender Equity, a WGG of the Astronomical Society of India, for increasing gender sensitization in the astronomy community in India. The 8th Annamani lecture was delivered by Abhasur on extraordinary/ordinary R. Rajalakshmi's Life and Science in September 2020. Annamani, after whom this lecture series is based, was a pioneering Indian physicist and a meteorologist who carried out path-breaking research in 1950s India against all odds. After completing her undergraduate degree in physics from Presidency College, Madras, she undertook research at the Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. She worked with C.V. Raman on the spectroscopy of diamonds and rubies and published 5 single-author papers. However, she was not granted a PhD degree by Madras University on the pretext that she did not have a master's degree, ignoring the fact that she had obtained a scholarship for graduate studies on the basis of her undergraduate degree. She took up an internship to study physics at Imperial College, London, but ended up in specializing on meteorological instrumentation. She returned to India in 1948 and joined the Indian Meteorological Department at Pune. In 1976, she retired as the Deputy Director General of IMD and subsequently returned to the Raman Research Institute as a visiting professor for several years. During her career as a meteorologist, Annamani helped in setting up instruments for studying the ozone layer and wind energy, as well as millimeter wave telescope at Nandi Hills to study solar radiation. She wrote 2 books on solar radiation. Our speaker today, Dr. Jayasree Subramanian, is an associate professor at SRM University, Andhra Pradesh, in the Department of Mathematics. Although she teaches higher mathematics, Dr. Subramanian has an interdisciplinary background. She completed her PhD in algebraic number theory from the University of Hyderabad. After a couple of postdoctoral fellowships in mathematics, Dr. Subramanian became inclined towards feminist science studies and carried out an empirical work to understand how gender makes a difference to doing science in India. Her research interests include equity and excellence in mathematics education, exploring ethno-mathematical knowledge of the communities of weavers in Andhra Pradesh and Telangana region, and teacher professional development in mathematics. She strives for the development of mathematics in India by understanding the impediments posed to it by gender and other socioeconomic discriminations. Dr. Subramanian is a member of the International Committee on Mathematics Education and Society, the Mathematics Teacher Association of India, as well as the Indian Association of Women's Studies. Today, Jayasree Subramanian will be speaking on They Are Axiomatic, We Are Empirical, the Indian Approach to the Gender Question in Mathematics. Jayasree would prefer to answer questions at the end of her talk, so I will request you to type your questions in the chat window and I will direct those to Jayasree in the end. Jayasree, welcome. The virtual floor is yours.
Thank you, Preeti. Thank you all. This is a great opportunity to talk about mathematics and gender. I thank the organizers very much. It's a real honor to be part of the Annamani series. Yeah, thank you very much for this opportunity. I do hope that I will do some justice to the offer that's been made to me. Yeah. So, so I think I'll begin by kind of a little bit of an explanation of the title that I gave. So first, let me begin by screen sharing. Is it fine? Are you able to
yes,
see this?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So actually, this is more like a Indian kind of title. I mean, I do not use axiomatic and empirical in the very literal sense of the term. I'm basically saying that here, actually a lot of hypotheses were made in the West about why there are so few women in girls and women in mathematics, and they were studied very carefully. So there's about some 40 to 50 years of rich literature from the West. And so, I mean, one begins with a certain hypothesis that, the ability to do mathematics is biological, and from there one makes a move to an entirely different kind of a theory at the end. This happens in the West, whereas in India, we have actually invested nothing in trying to understand if at all gender makes a difference to doing mathematics? And if yes, how? And the only way we are trying to address the gender question is by saying that we don't believe that, this is all in the West. The notion that girls can't do math is something that's very, we don't believe that. It's only those in the West believe this. And therefore, the explanation for why there are so few women in maths is because those who are actually really capable of doing mathematics perhaps haven't really knocked at the doors. Perhaps. So anyway, we will see this. This is just to, I was kind of jokingly saying that I wish I could put a wink there, because none of these terms have to be taken literally, as some might actually take it literally and ask me, in what sense is it axiomatic? And I'm a student of mathematics, and I do understand exactly what it means to say that something is axiomatic and something is not. Okay. All right. So next slide is, I think. Okay, so as students of science, most of us who are here are students of science, and we like tables, we like charts, we like graphs. We find it much more easy to deal with them than actually reading a paragraph where a lot of stuff is said. So I'm going, and scientists actually have always, when I carried out my study that was 20 years back, and trying to understand how gender makes a difference to doing science in India, scientists always told me that, let the data speak. They did not want me, my statement, they didn't want me to say something. They wanted the data alone to speak. In some sense, as if the data is going to be more objective, and I could be more biased and trying to kind of make a case where none exists. So let the data speak is what they said. And so I shall try and see if the data will speak now, a little bit at least. So some data on awards. This is what we have. Fields Medal, which is the equivalent of Nobel for mathematics. We have about 60 medals have been awarded, of which 59 have gone to men. Abel, out of 21, 20 have gone to men. Navalina Prize, which is again a kind of highly respected this thing, 10 and 10 have gone to men. Wolf Prize, given by Israel. This again, 100% have gone to men. ICTP Ramanujam Prize is instituted by for mathematicians and scientists working in the third world. So this of the 16 awards prizes given, 14 have gone to men, 2 have gone to women. One is Sujata Ramadurai. The other person is I'm just missing a name. Infosys Prize again, 13 of them. Just one went to a woman. Bhatnagar Award, we have Indian. This is the best award that one could get in India, highest. And so 73 awards, of which 70 have gone to men. So you can see the percentages there on this side. So men seem to have been overrepresented. I mean, would it be a fair thing to say? So I look at also, underrepresentation of women in academia is well known. I'm not going to give you a lot of data. There's just so much that's available out there. And I've just sourced one sample data here from US. So it says that 59% of undergraduate students are male. So, and then you see the way it increases. By the time you go to PhD, it's 72%. And by the time you have, you're looking at postdoctoral fellows, you have 75% male. Tenured faculty, tenured stream faculty, those who are teaching in undergrad colleges, it is 76% male. And full professors, 89% male. So now let's look at the Indian data. Indian data does not exist really. I just really went from web page to web page and did this counting actually. I couldn't do it for all the universities, so I just did for some of the major research institutions, some IITs, and a couple of universities. So you can see that KIFR Mumbai has 96% of 96% men, and out of 25, 24 women, there's just only one woman there. IMSC has just 3 women, 13 out of the 16 are men, and so on. You see, so the comparatively better numbers are when you look at University of Hyderabad, out of the 19 men, 19 faculty, you have only 13 men, only 13, only 68%. And in Delhi University, again, the numbers are around less than 70. On the whole, for these 14 institutions, if you look at the total representation of men, it's 81.6. So you can see that. And so next set of data is, looking at math Olympiads. Because the thing is that when you're looking at gender in mathematics, actually you need to look at these two. Not just at the university level, where women are women getting employed? Are they? What's happening to them? Are they able to carry out their research? Is definitely a question that one should address, but also one needs to look at what's happening at the school level. So IMO data is available online, and again, this is something that I collected from what's available there. It's conducted. It's been held since 1959. 135 countries participate, and India also participates. So here is the data. You have 19,255 students have participated in it since the beginning, of which 83.2% are male students. 7.4 are female. We know for this is what and for some the information is not known. 1,810 students there. There is no information known. I think for them. So we have this data. So India sent out so for 186 participants, of which 178 are male, 7 are female. For one, there's no information available. I suppose we should be able to get it. If I reach out to people, I'll be able to get that. But neighbors seem to be doing better than us. Bangladesh and Pakistan sent 87 and 83 participants, but then out of which 9 female participants. 9 from Bangladesh and 9 from Pakistan. And so I'll be soon showing you the. So if you look at the whole data, which I'm not going to show you, it's 135 countries. I really cannot show that data. The pleasant surprise is that these countries, there's a comparatively better information. So Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus had sent 6, of which 3 are male and 3 female. UAE sent 20, of which 15 female and 5 only male. And Oman sent 6, of which 5 are female and 1 male, which is actually very interesting. Some countries are actually sending more female participants, and large number of countries don't. That's clear. Another international comparison, test that one could look at is the standard thing that we look at is PISA, Program for International Student Assessment, which is conducted every 3 years for 15-year-olds across the world. So I will show you 2 things here. This is the data from 2009. It shows that there is gender gap in math and it favors boys, but it varies from countries to country. And in some countries like Albania, they actually have girls perform better than boys, and this thing is the 10 points. Their performance is better. Whereas US has consistently, regularly shows girls doing worse than boys, and 2009 showed 20-point gap. I also have a graph here. This is for 2018. You can see here. I suppose you can see the graph. So you see that this circles are for boys, and there's little rhombus is for girls. And so you can see that Indonesia girls have done better than boys, and here Iceland, girls have done better. This is, I think, Norway and Finland. These countries, girls have done better than boys. In most of the countries, of course, boys have done better than girls. But the fact remains that so it's interesting that at least in some countries, one sees that girls are doing at least equally or better than boys. Okay. So India also has this. India does not participate in PISA, so we do not have any data from India there. This National Achievements Survey is conducted every year in India, and so this is 2015 data. I looked at what they have to say, and they have something called a mean achievement score that they compute. And interestingly, the number is 250 for both boys and girls. So there is no gender difference. So then, really, the Indian data wants us to actually ask and answer, why is it that only we send only 7 girls to IMO, or 90% of the students at IITs in the BTech courses are me? The questions that we have not really bothered to even look at, which is what I think I'm going to talk about. Okay, so before I go on to actually the major main things that I want to main studies that I want to point to, I do want to clarify this, that gender is not a euphemism for women or sex, because most of the time, and I really that if you have noticed, I actually, rather than saying that there are most of the data that I showed, I actually showed how men are overrepresented rather than saying women are underrepresented, basically because I want to really highlight the point that gender is not something only women have. Men and women have, and that we really have to actually explain. Men do have to do also some homework in trying to explain as to why and how the space is actually so much a male space. It's not an exercise that's actually left to only women. So it's common for us to think women's question when we hear gender question. So therefore, we need to understand who we refer to when we say gender. The term gender refers to men, women, and transgender people. And what's very, very sad is that in all the data that we find, not only that we do not see transgender people. The sad part is that there's not even a column left for saying that the participation is 0. The column even doesn't exist. And that's something at least that we should begin by actually changing that we should have 3 columns rather than 2, at least 3 columns rather than 2. And note the fact that there somehow aren't, transgender people definitely can do mathematics like anybody else can do mathematics. And that we do have one transgender person in India, A. Mani, who has recently written about her experience. It appeared in the Hindustan Times. Maybe many of you may have seen it. About what it means to be the lone transgender person, with a love for mathematics, with trying to actually pursue a career in mathematics. She an amazing person that she actually somehow managed to do a PhD on her own, spending most of her time all by herself. Never, being able to be part of the larger community where she's not going to be very easily welcome. Okay, so for us, when we are talking about gender, then we really need to think not just about men and women. Not just about women, we need to think about men, women, and transgender people, and much more. I'll come to that again. So gender is, a sociological category where sex. We'll stick to that. I know very well that both the category, sociological category, and the sex as a biological category, both are being actually disturbed today with newer and newer understanding that we are achieving with transgender from transgender people, or the changes the knowledge that they are bringing into our understanding of gender is actually changing our existing understanding of gender and sex. But I'll not go into that. I'll just simply at least say, I stick to this much, that the category gender is a sociological category, and at least that much, and sex is a biological category, and that when we cannot use gender as a euphemism for sex. So for example, what do we mean by saying that gender is a sociological category? Here is an example. The reason why women are seen to have more domestic responsibilities, and this is very important for us, because even almost anywhere that we go, anywhere that we talk about the dual burden that women have, as if only women marry, and as if only women have children, as if the domestic responsibilities are things that only women can carry out, right? So this whole thing of absolving men of their responsibility to care for their family and children, right? This is not, there's nothing biological about it. This is totally sociological, right? This notion that understanding that science institutions actually tell us that, women have a double burden, simply reiterates the fact that, men are exempt from, science institutions expect men to exempt themselves from devoting time for their family and they are therefore, so it's clear. Women can take the double burden, and men shall be relieved of it. That's what is communicated to us, and so it's extremely important for us to actually take note of this. Okay, so another thing that I want to also say is that no gender is homogeneous, right? This is important because we somehow tend to say that men are overrepresented, and that's why I asked the question: are men overrepresented? Now, which men are overrepresented? That's a question that we need to ask. Are all men equally overrepresented? Do I find black men in the whole category that we looked at in the list of Fields Medal? I did not find a single black man, right? Not one black man and not a single black woman. It's overrepresented by not just men, by a certain kind of men, right? Were they at least white men? And if you look at actually also the country, so the data that's available actually says the countries in which they're working. So they are men from USA. They are over 80% of them. 48 out of the 60 are men born in one of these countries, either US or Europe or one of these continents, Europe, US or Australia. US is not a continent. I'm sorry to mix up all this. But also that majority of them are working in 3 or 4 countries only, either France or Germany or US or something like that. A large number of them simply work from certain universities in certain countries, right? So then when you're looking at again men, that's not really that doesn't tell the whole story. That the data, as it reveals something, it also hides a whole lot of stuff. So the category men, if we use simply the category men or women, similarly women also, when we look at the data on almost all the study that we look at on gender and mathematics, most of the women studied are white women. There is very little literature on what happens to black girls. Well, there is some, but very little on what happens to other races. Black people, Asian. There's some little data available, but not as much. It's not as extensive as what one has. So most of the time when we are saying gender, we mean women and girls, and then again the image that comes to us when we are in the Western context is white women and white girls, and in Indian context clearly it's dominant caste, middle class girls and women, and this is a problem. So here again, if you look at the Bhatnagar award awardees, I counted, and because I am from mathematics, I do know a lot of people there. So I could count and find that at least 34 out of the 73 are Brahmin men. So men are overrepresented is a misnomer. Brahmin men are overrepresented. Brahmin women, of the 3 women, 2 are Brahmin. 21 men and 1 woman belong to Hindu non-Brahmin upper caste background. Out of the remaining 13, I couldn't actually get I couldn't make out which caste category they belong to. But certainly, one thing is that I couldn't see a single Muslim name, single Christian name. I only hope that of the remaining 13, at least there are some OBC or someone from OBC, SC, category. We really do not know. Well, I know that scientists actually very strongly object to, because I have gone and met and asked the caste category to which they might belong. They strongly object to such questions, and they say that, I don't believe in God, I don't believe in religion. I personally also do not believe in God or religion or caste, but that does not change the fact that I am recognized as a person coming from a certain religion and a certain caste. I might be I always joke and say that, well, I am a non-believer, I'm an atheist, I'm a Hindu atheist, I'm a Hindu non-believer, and somebody else will be a Muslim non-believer. Muslim non-believer is not a non-believer for us. Muslim non-believer is a Muslim, and they will, in practical situation, like, finding place to stay, when you're looking for a housing, you go and say that I'm a non-believer, you be a Muslim, you're not going to be, easily accommodated. And if I say that I'm a non-believer, they're not even going to worry about it. So, so it's not as simple as what I believe in and what I don't believe in. Okay, so then how do we formulate the gender question in mathematics? I'll formulate it as complexly as one could. So, are able-bodied, white, heterosexual men from certain economic background and certain geopolitical locations overrepresented in mathematics? And if yes, what is the implication of this for democratizing the opportunity for learning and doing mathematics to include the excluded? This is how I would like to formulate it in the larger, in the global context. And in the Indian context, I would like to ask, are able-bodied Hindu, Brahmin, and non-Brahmin upper caste heterosexual men from certain economic background, certain states and certain metropolitan cities overrepresented in mathematics? And if yes, what is the implication of this for democratizing access to mathematics, opportunity for learning and doing mathematics to include the excluded? This might sound like a lot of politically correct statement or something like that. Now I've included all the categories, I've not missed out anybody. And well, it's an unreal question. But then if you really look at the fact that everyone who aspires to pursue a career in mathematics, every one of them who wants to realize a certain dream, every one of them has a right to equal right to realize it. I mean, we may wake up to the fact that disabled also have an equal right to mathematics. We are probably not in no hurry to do that, but that does not change the fact that they are in a hurry to actually. It's their one chance in life. And so, I mean, I'm nobody actually sitting here to somehow say that I'll first talk about gender and mathematics in the plain thing of, there's just a binary. And then I will add on a little bit of, transgender and then a little bit of other things and mix it. I think that's absolutely unfair. I think that right at the beginning, at least I know that it's extremely difficult to hold on to this difference all through. And there is probably very little complex literature that's available to actually address the gender question in this complexity. But I think that when we talk about gender, we cannot anymore talk about it in this binary sense. Universal categories, because universal categories then eventually only contribute to benefiting the dominant amongst them. So say, for example, you might end up having more upper caste women in mathematics in India, or you might have actually the data, if you look at NSF data, you find that the representation of white women is much more than Asian men or clearly black men. Hispanic and others are underrepresented. So that's why it's actually much better to talk about gender question rather than, like talking about, earlier we talked about the women's question in science or mathematics. Okay. Okay, so then, so what's special about mathematics? Because, almost, we know that almost all academic domains are overrepresented by men of certain class, certain caste, certain race, whatever, locally specific dominant sections, dominant group of men are overrepresented. So why talk about mathematics? Even, we know that, for example, literally departments are full of girls. Probably it's very difficult to find probably male students in postgraduate courses, programs in humanities department. But then when you look at the faculty, it's overrepresented by men. I mean, almost all the departments. I mean, any department that you take, it's men. So what's so special about mathematics? The thing that's actually particularly special about mathematics is the fact that mathematics is seen as a certain inborn ability. The ability to do mathematics is seen as inborn. You're born with it. So there's no such equivalent notion as like intrinsic ability to do mathematics, gifted mathematician. I have not heard about somebody saying that gifted political scientist, gifted sociologist. Maybe, I do not know. I have not heard, at least. I do not know about. But we have talked about for forever Ramanujam remains a gifted mathematician. That for 100 years maybe now we have celebrated Ramanujam and we shall continue to celebrate him. We shall take pride in the fact that there is a Ramanujam in this country and that this guy. But then we really do not, of course, look at a whole lot of other people who actually have no way of learning and doing mathematics. So, but then Ramanujam deserves, because he is gifted. The notion of giftedness, and giftedness is actually a domain within mathematics. Education research recognizes giftedness as an area of research. looks at it. So this is a very special thing about mathematics. Mathematically precocious youth have to be, they have to be caught when they are young and then trained properly, and so they will eventually become great mathematicians and so on and so forth. In India, of course, we have had mathematicians say that mathematics is like music, and of course that's classical music. And it's inborn in a person, and that people have been told that you really cannot do mathematics. You accept it, and it's like music. If you don't have the ability, no matter how hard you try, you'll never be able to do mathematics. So this basically therefore means that you may not even have a chance to learn mathematics, because you need to really deserve to do mathematics. You need to have the gift to be gifted enough to do mathematics at some level, and like you might be left out right at the beginning. I mean, really, I was thinking today as I was writing that thank God they made mathematics compulsory up to class 10. That some chance is there for a whole lot of people who would have otherwise been, like what happened in South Africa, where mathematics was not taught to the local population. It was said that there is no need for the locals to actually learn mathematics, because there's no use of it. And the same thing we would have done for a whole lot of people today who, we don't find them without, who are not able to actually get into good research institution to pursue a career in mathematics. Several castes, people belonging to several caste background would have automatically been left outside, would have never had an opportunity to know what mathematics is all about. Okay, yeah, so this is what is special. And now I'm going to now look at what has actually happened. So when you're talking about gender in mathematics, there are at least two dimensions to it. One is what happens to career in mathematics. So one's aspiration to actually higher mathematics, to excel, to pursue a career in mathematics, what happens to it, how gender makes a difference to it. That's at one level. The another level is what happens at the school level. Who gets to be encouraged to do mathematics. So for example, now, we are sending 7 students every year. So we have sent totally seven students, 7 girls to participate in the IMO. Now, how does this happen? This happens because there are regional math. There are several stages in which this Olympiad exam is done. So reaching up to the regional level itself is almost an impossibility. Most of the time, schools decide who they will send for the first level of assessment, and they send often boys. I asked around a lot of girls, whatever information that we have in India is not systematic. We simply have anecdotal information. I'm sure somebody, hopefully, and I will be glad if somebody contradicts me and says that a lot of girls have been sent to write the RMO or something like that. Most of the time, school decides who they will send, and that they often send boys to write the exam. And so eventually you have a very tiny minority of girls. And actually one girl I met, who gave the RMO, she said that it was so tense for her to write the exam for the 2 hours or whatever time that she writes the exam, because there is a whole lot of attention on her. There's this one strange girl sitting there and writing, and so everybody was wanting to support her. She said, I just couldn't handle the kind of pressure that I had on her. That's what happens. You really are selected out right at the school level. But thankfully, we don't do anything about it. In the West, what happened is that they actually began to try and understand. I actually think that they actually wanted to conclude and say that certain sections of the population actually cannot do mathematics. So there was a lot of why did they even begin to actually try and see? When you're looking at data, why do you pass it across gender? Why do you sex? Why do you want to know whether girls can do mathematics or cannot do mathematics? Yes. There should be some reason, right? There should be some reason. And I think that, when they actually began this, they also found, of course, that girls weren't doing as, performing as good as boys in tests. And then, so the hypothesis that they come up with is that there is a biological difference in the ability to do mathematics. It is sex difference. So this is a hypothesis that they begin with, and so there's a lot of literature over there. But 40 years of studies, there are 2 camps. both trying to kind of, they read each other. There have been extensive research that has been designed and done, and that's really remarkable. Okay. Research in mathematics education has engaged with the question of sex difference in performance in mathematics for more than 6 decades now. Early researchers focused on sex difference. The early, this thing is very clearly biological, and then they are also talking about sex difference, and they are trying to explain it in biological or psychological terms. So, one of the leading figures in the area of gender and mathematics is Elizabeth Cinema. There are several others. I have not quoted. I mean, there are several. Gila Leader is there. There are several major thinkers and writers, and there's a lot of literature. But Fenema's work is, in some sense, very foundational. So, I mean, I'm just beginning, only referring largely to her work. So, she begins by doing a review of literature in 1974, and in that paper, she actually, when she looks at the data, she finds that the arguments are more to try and explain that it's biological. She argues that in arithmetical reasoning, mathematical ability and mathematical ability, males have consistent. Research actually studies argue that there is a difference between computational ability and arithmetical reasoning and mathematical ability, and boys are good at arithmetical reasoning and mathematical ability, whereas girls were good at computation. So again, another piece, this thing she says, the evidence would suggest that, suggest to the teacher that boys will achieve higher than girls on tests dealing with mathematical reasoning, while the girls will achieve higher than boys on tests on computational ability. And I mean, there's then more focused research, and then they begin by looking at children before they actually come to school. Is there, because the attempt is to actually try and locate it in your cell, in your body, in your genes. So they don't want it to be tainted by what the teachers do in the school or whatever else is happening there. They just want to catch you raw and try and figure out whether there's actually any difference. And they find that there's no difference between girls and boys in their ability to do mathematics before they enter school. And also that studies found that not much difference could be found at the primary grades. I think there's one study which I have noted. Who claims that sex difference in mathematical abilities are of course present at the kindergarten level and earlier. That's what he says. So I mean, these studies have shown that there's no support to that argument, that claim. So differences appear as they grow. So a lot of tests were designed. Standardized tests were developed to test sex difference in performance at higher grades. A study by Parsley in 1964 confirmed that girls were superior in computation while boys were superior in mathematical reasoning, while another by California arithmetic test found no difference. Now, this kind of a contradictory research, I mean, it constantly, there's this, they have to deal with this. Everyone is finding something, and there's somebody coming up. And interestingly, also simultaneously, you will find that even as somebody is arguing for a biological difference, there are also others arguing that no, it is not a biological difference. It's only the sociological factors that actually account for difference in performance. This has been going hand in hand, side by side. So some of the longitudinal studies were taken up to settle the discrepancy between, they have these discrepancies and they've tried to fix this. So, I mean, no, I'm just I've just kind of selected some little bits here and there. So you find that it's beginning like this. So one set of studies and outcomes from there suggests the conclusion is inescapable that boys of these populations learned mathematics measured by these tests. That's very interesting. Measured by these tests better than did the girls of these population. Although the girls appeared to have done slightly better at younger age in low-level cognitive skill, by the time of puberty was well established, 9th and 10th grade, boys were outperforming girls at all levels of cognitive complexity. Another, this Benbow, a couple, two of them, and Dubinsky, their studies again often quoted. they have very deeply committed to the biological this thing, the thesis that it's actually in the biology. They do say that there is, yes, I mean, sociological factors could make some small difference, but even if you remove all of them, there will still be some difference, and that can only be explained by biological factors. So mathematically talented males as young as 13 are more theoretically oriented than females on the set of values that they are referring to. Study of values for mathematics. Furthermore, their primary interest, the primary interests of boys lie to investigate and the realistic, working sector, working with mechanical gadgets sector of whatever Holland's hexagon of vocational interest. In contrast, mathematically talented females are more socially and aesthetically oriented and have interests that are more evenly divided among investigative, social, and artistic pursuits. So at the scene, what's very interesting is that when they say this, when they make these observations, they seem to be immune to the fact that all these are coming in because of the society in which we are living. Right? It has to be, I mean, today I think it is more or less clear to us, at least for some of us, I hope for most of us, it's clear that these differences that we see here are coming because of the society in which we live. Okay. So they have this, a group was set up by somebody called Stanley in 1971. It's called the Study of Mathematically Precocious Youth. This was founded by this person, and they carried out extensive studies over several years with the hypothesis that sociological factors and the differential course taking. So students actually take different kind of courses. Your performance automatically, if you have not done a course on linear algebra, if you've not done linear algebra 1, and I am going to teach you function analysis, you are not going to be actually doing well in function analysis because you need to actually know linear algebra to be able to do function analysis. So are similar things, So differential course taking often accounted for difference in performance, or the sociological factors accounted for difference in performance. This was actually not something that they agreed with. They doubted that. They did not agree with it. And so they continued to carry out more research. And one of the things that is actually often mentioned is that there's a significant sex difference between in the performance in spatial ability. Boys actually do better in problems that involve spatial ability and spatial reasoning than girls. And this was supposed to be an indicator of your ability to do mathematics. So if you are good at spatial ability, then you are good at mathematics. Since boys are better at it and girls are not, so girls are not good at mathematics. And that's the conclusion. Not what I am saying. That's the conclusion that they derive. Okay. And so this spatial ability was, I think, was seen to be so significant, so striking that it leads to hypotheses such as, there's a genetic component to performance, in mathematics, and that relates to clearly sex-linked gene hypothesis. They have a hormonal hypothesis. Testosterone is supposed to be influencing your performance in mathematics, which is also why as one grows older, more you find that boys are doing better in mathematics than girls, and so on. So many such theses were advocated. So I just want to say that these two camps, both the biological basis camp and the sociocultural they both kind of looked at each other's. So it was an interesting kind of an academic work, and also that these things actually did make a difference to policy and led to a lot of changes. So it was state funded and used by the state. I mean, and in schools, at least to some extent. Okay. So the other. I mean, so I just wanted to say a few things about mathematics as a male domain. This is the sociocultural factors. How sociocultural factors actually account for poor performance, comparatively poorer performance in mathematics. So they actually looked at classrooms, talked to teachers, talked to students, tried out, did observation of the classroom. They did several things. I have not even listed all the things that they did. And so, say for example, one of the studies actually say that teachers tend to even when you give a fairly simple problem to a girl, and when she does it, you kind of appreciate and say that, oh yeah, excellent, brilliant, you've done very well. Whereas you kind of continue to challenge, male students, and the challenge obviously comes with you're communicating alongside that. You actually think that they can do it, and so that kind of rebuilds confidence in them that they can really do it, and they take on the challenges, while actually girls don't get that opportunity. There are several teachers very strongly, have actually said that, they do believe that, teachers believe that boys are better at mathematics. Happens in the West and happens here in India as well, but then we have not studied it. That's been very well documented. The classroom organization, the whole, who do you talk to? These are very, very well known, right? Right? Boys ask more questions than girls do, and then, does that mean girls don't understand mathematics? How do you explain that? And again, if you look at which boys talk in the class, which boys are sitting at the back, which boys don't ask questions, then you will find that it's not really true that boys ask questions. Certain boys ask questions, and why they ask has more to do with sociological factor, the fact that they feel they can speak, while girls, even if they know the correct answer, they often doubt themselves, and they don't ask. They undervalue their own ability. So mathematics is for Fenema Sherman mathematics attitude scale. This was developed, and this was used to try and various studies were conducted to try and understand if the gap is actually reducing. That was the idea that can be, if it is a if sociological factors actually account for for differential performance in the test, then if we change things, which we can try and change, for example, you can really have for example, Sweden has a teacher education program in which gender sensitivity, teachers are expected to actually pass a course on gender sensitization to address there's mathematics class. There are teach mathematics. A teacher, a pre-service teacher, has to qualify in a course to understand how to actually be sensitive about gender. These kind of efforts actually contribute to bringing in change. And so one hopes to be able to see that the gap narrows. Fenema's work, she did this work. She actually goes into the field. She does this study. She developed the scales, and she really has done this extensive work. And in her 2000 paper, it's a very interesting paper, because after all the hard work, with the hope that, you really think that you will be able to change things. But so she says that yes, things change. Yes, the gaps reduce. But then still, you find that difference exists. Still, you find that boys do better than girls. And she kind of throws up her hands and says that, why is it that we should actually expect girls to do equally well in mathematics? But I suppose, most of us really will think that when we are living in a larger society, the larger space in which we are functioning is a patriarchal society. Within that setup, you can't expect that you could just somehow fix some small one problem in one little place, because there are so many other factors that are operating and affecting it, and that you can't really just fix this one thing. And that doesn't mean that we can simply leave it. We need to actually work with it, and to transform us as a patriarchal society. We have to stop being this, in India, we need to stop being this Brahminical patriarchal society. We need to actually become a more egalitarian along gender and otherwise also. And unless and we need to do that, we need to strive to do that. We cannot simply say that the society shall remain patriarchal, that we shall stick to our patriarchal values, but somehow we will have achieved equality, gender equality in the classroom. That will never happen. And that's what I think. I mean, the frustration that Phenema felt at the end of it, this is how I account for it. And that I do not expect to see change in a smaller space without actually also working to change things in the larger space. We cannot have this happening. Okay. So the very interesting fact is also that, a lot of changes happened in the West. They really use the information. They kind of design things. And so the research actually was worth it. I mean, they invested in research, and that led to changes, that led to not just understanding, that also led to some amount of change in the larger, society, in what's happening in schools, what's happening in the performance, and so on and so forth. Okay, so the other thing that happened alongside is that while we are largely these questions were, I think Europe, US, and Australia, you find major work coming from Europe. You also have very, very major contributions coming from Australia and from US. But this also led to a lot of studies in trying to understand how gender makes a difference to learning mathematics in other countries. And one of the very interesting papers that we used in the classroom is from China, which shows that, I mean, there is no gender bias. I mean, there, at least there, in that context, I mean, there was no significant difference in performance in China. So these kind of studies actually, interestingly, contribute to, and that's why I said that when you look at those graphs, even though there are only 4 or 5 countries where girls are doing better than boys, it actually is good for us to know this, because it actually very clearly says that it cannot be that in one country gender operates, biology operates in another country. It does not. I mean, if it's a biological factor, it will have to operate across the world. If gender does not exist in one country and it exists in some other country, then it cannot be explained by biology. It can only be explained by sociological factors, and that's actually what happens in this 2010 paper, which is a very interesting and very important paper by Quest, Hyde, and Blinn, Cross-National Patterns of Gender Difference in Mathematics, a meta-analysis. This actually argues, I mean, this is a very, very long and paper with both qualitative and quantitative data. Very difficult to also comprehend, because I mean, not all of us can actually. I really cannot engage with all the statistics that's there. But somebody else should be able to. I mean, I can access certain. There's something in that paper for me as a pure mathematician, and my understanding of statistics is very limited. But I mean, it's for those who can actually also understand statistics. I think this paper has much to give. So, in some sense of the term, one has actually kind of arrived at this understanding now that we cannot anymore. Though, of course, Lawrence Summers will never disappear from the scene. I'm sure they are still working, trying to prove that gender. I mean, it is biological. Women, and there's an inherent. That's a claim that they make, right? That there's an inherent difference in the ability to do mathematics. Gender-based difference. Girls do not have the same ability that boys have. Men do not. Women do not have the same ability that men have. They're not talking about others. Transgender people do not even come into our view, right? Lawrence Summers would be there. We'll never. I mean, they will always be working, and that research will continue to try and explain difference as long as difference exists in biological terms. But only thing is that those claims do not have anymore the kind of reception that they had earlier. 40, 50 years back, the readiness with which everybody was willing to accept a biological explanation, one doesn't have that kind of a space anymore, because you are actually seeing lot more girls and women in academia doing most of the things that you thought that they could never do. And there's a very recent study, which I think is very interesting, because it actually, rather than actually pointing to, it's a neurological study, rather than pointing to difference, it's actually pointing to similarities. To investigate early biology of mathematics and gender, we tested for gender difference in the neural processes of mathematics in young children. We measured 3 to 10-year-old children's neural development with the FMR, functional magnetic resonance imaging, during naturalistic viewing of mathematics education videos, and we implemented both frequent. I do not know what all these Bayesian analysis. I know they exist, but I do not know what they are. Frequentist and Bayesian analysis that quantify gender similarities and differences in neural process. Across all analysis, girls and boys showed significant gender similarities in neural functioning, indicating that boys and girls engage the same neural system during mathematics development. Perhaps there's more hope to say that actually, rather than so probably you'll have evidence showing that biologically there is actually no difference, and there's only the difference can only be, that already exists at some level, but it would even come in this kind of data from biological sciences to add to what we already know. So this is the kind of work that has happened in the West. Now, why this? We really have no data in India. So Indian mathematicians maintain that notions such as gender makes a difference exist only in the West. They don't exist in India. So therefore, since we do not think that girls cannot do, we don't think that there's a difference in abilities because of gender. So only way in which we can account for underrepresentation of girls in IITs, in Olympiad, underrepresentation of women in places like Tata Institute of Fundamental Research and other places, is because the really talent. This was a statement somebody. This is not my statement. This is something that one of the mathematicians actually told me. It's because really talented girls are not coming to do. They're not even finishing schools. So it's actually you are actually trying to explain away the absence of women in mathematics by pointing to the larger problem that which is of course an important problem that we still there is a lot of girls do not finish school, and very few girls actually from marginalized caste, marginalized for economically marginalized, socio-economically marginalized caste background, rural girls do not actually even get to finish school, and perhaps we have the equivalent of Ramanujan waiting there, but that argument actually is an excuse. Here there how do you explain the fact that the men and the women and the girls who are here in front of you, why aren't if they have been able to survive and reach the places that they have reached, why aren't they doing as good as the men? And why are they not even making to the science institutions? The number of PhD students, female PhD students itself in these premier institutions is really low. The number of students that they take is itself very, very low. And in that, the number of female students that they take is very low. A good friend of mine, a woman mathematician, once told me that in fact in my interviews, a mathematician told me, male mathematician told me that mathematics is really very difficult. It's an abstract domain. No, physics, even physicists have the physical world to kind of hold out to. I don't know, they are doing string theory. I do not know so much physics, whether particle physics, etc. They have the physical world, perhaps, I do not know. But mathematics is far too abstract, and so it's not everybody's game. And then he told me that Brahmins have done very well in mathematics, and specifically Iyengars have done very well in mathematics, which is a very interesting thing to hear. And then he also said that, they have very rigorous research program, and boys somehow manage to survive. Girls don't, because their minds are, and he knows, are on other things like jewelry and clothes and such things. They are not really serious about mathematics. That's what he said. And from the same institution, a friend of mine who's a female faculty member there in the same department told me that the men terrorize the girls, that they actually run away from these institutions. So that's a story that we have not really engaged with. We have simply, in this country, we have not really bothered to study and understand why there are so few girls making to IITs. IIT data is really interesting. Let's say who makes
Jayasree,
who
sorry,
makes it to IITs?
sorry to interrupt. Jayasree, 5 minutes.
I'll finish. Who makes it to places like IIT? It's not the poorest of the poor. It's not those for whom we have made no plans to give any meaningful education. It is largely, today you can't get into an IIT unless you actually go through a coaching class, and in order to go through a coaching class, you need money. So it is the middle class, upper middle class, which is making to IITs, and most of them actually have equal. I mean, I think most of these families have one boy, one girl kind of. It's not the shortage of girls in these upper middle class homes. It's not that they are only having boys; they are also having girls equal number. How do you explain the fact that less than 10% of the BTech admissions are girls? I mean, how do you explain this? How do you explain the fact that only 25% of the students who are enrolled in this is the data that I probably old enough, maybe hopefully this changed. And about 25% of the girls, of the students enrolled in the coaching centers are female. How do you explain this fact? You can explain it by several things. One is not that the parents, parents often want to send boys. It's not that doesn't operate, that's there. But also because the coaching classes are held at such odd hours, so early in the morning, that there's nobody to drop the girls over there. They're either they are staying far away from these places, and so on and so forth. There are a whole range of problems because of which you don't find girls reaching the coaching classes. And why are we not maintaining the 25% from the coaching classes to the IITs? That's a question that we have not even bothered to study. We don't even think. Studying gender in India is at the school level is a very, very difficult problem, because we are such a complex society. We have so many different factors playing. You have rural urban divide. You have schools that are not uniform. How do you design a study? It's quite a challenging job. But it's not that it cannot be done. It can definitely be done. But in order to do that, sociologists can only do so much. Mathematicians can only make statements about, right, like the kind of statements that we make. You need educationists, people who are working in math education. Only they can actually design these studies. And if we want to do that, we really need to develop mathematics education research in this country, which is practically non-existent. There are probably 20 people in the whole country. There are probably 20 people who are trying to do something with education research literature. So and of course, there are at the level of employment, at the level of PhD, and we know a lot of stuff already. We have already. There was a very interesting statement that I read. I would like to actually read that out. This is this lady who got the Infosys prize. Just give me a minute. I'll read out from what I actually copied. So Nalini Anantharaman. Nalini Anantharaman is actually she's a French. She's half French. Father is from India, so she grew up there, and she's got several prizes up. One of which is the Infosys prize. And so so in an interview she says that why in an interview where one's asking her to explain why there are so few women in mathematics. This is what she has to say. She says, at conferences, sometimes I am the only woman. In France, just about 17% mathematicians are women. There are even fewer in purer subfields. And as you go up the hierarchy, there are even fewer. There is now a lot of thinking in France about the reasons for this. I think I'm quite strong in that I just want to be satisfied with my work. Let people think what they want to, she says. She says, I've noticed that among students, girls and boys tend to do exams differently, especially in mathematics. Right? And how differently? When they know only a partial answer, girls say they don't know, whereas boys are more likely to invent something. I think in their education, they are more encouraged to bluff. Even as a researcher, it's taken me time to realize that sometimes my male colleagues believe as if they know the answer, when they actually don't. This is something that, this is something that we really need to also pay attention to. Why are there so few women in science, in mathematics? There's so few women in science and mathematics because we don't believe that they know. We have been told by young researchers, that by young and old academics, that when we were in school, there was no interaction between boys and girls. There was only competition. There was no communication. In the Indian, hopefully things have changed now. And then again, this boy said that till I reached this, was in one of those premier institutions. Till I reached this institution, I never thought girls understood. They work hard, they memorize, they don't understand, and that's a belief that they have. They do not check it out, and that they are sitting in decision making. And that when so if I go back to why should I pose the gender question as complexly as I posed it? It is not just to be politically correct. It is to be able to say that who are the space that we open up for people to pursue a career. It actually gets shaped by those who are there in it, those who are populating that space. So if the space is full of, say, upper caste men, then the space is going to, in so many ways, be shaped by what they believe, their beliefs that go not just their notions about, many things are going to shape this space. First, one of the most important things that I have been thinking about is the notion of merit that we have, which is actually deeply unethical. Why do I think that the notion of merit that we have is deeply unethical? It's because, what kind of merit can you talk about when you have schools where there are no boards, there are no teachers, there are such an unequal society, such an unequal setup? What notion of merit can you actually use without being aware of the fact that it is definitely going to privilege the privileged? Right? I think that this is totally unethical. And so we need to really reconsider. If you want to use a notion of merit, then we need to really work on and redefine something that actually takes into account several factors, which will call for a lot of work. Number one. Number two is that, our state institutions, state-funded institutions, the leading research institutions in this country, the central and state universities, have functioned as though the space that have been offered to them are their private spaces, that just to show their, like to become a Ramanujam or not, right? It is to actually establish and show your ability to do something. But that's not the case. You are working, you are funded by, I'm saying this because, we have constantly been told that, we don't have good mathematicians in this country. Who knows any mathematics? Nobody. We kind of prided ourselves by saying that there are only 10 people who can do mathematics in this country. We ought to be ashamed of it, but then we are very proud of it. And that comes from where? I need to ask and understand that question. Who are the people who are saying this? Right? Why are we not really thinking that, funded by the state, my commitment as an academic ought to be for the country and not to actually just, that's where we have failed, deeply failed. And that's where I want to stop here. And I'll take questions.
Thank you, Jayasree, for an exciting, interesting talk. And it's kind of very disturbing to see that the number of women in maths is obviously worse than astrophysics, which is already bad. So I can see there are some questions. At least there's one question, and maybe others could probably raise their hands. But let me just read out the first question. This is by Devarati. She's asking, what steps can we take to make mathematics and sciences more interesting and attractive for girl students?
I think they are just attractive. I don't think that they are less attractive to girl students. It's not that science is. When did we think that? What is it that's keeping us inside? I think it is actually our love for the subject that's keeping us inside. Most of us have treaded a lonely path. We have been alone. We have been humiliated, insulted, abused, told to get lost. I have been. At least I've written about it. It's in the public space, and that still in spite of that, when you actually prove a theorem, when you understand a concept, it excites you. Mathematics and science are already attractive enough for girls. They are no less attractive for girls. What is not working for us is the question is like, how do we change the outside? How do we actually make these? That is the question that I think we need to answer.
Right. Yeah. I think I agree with that. So there's another comment by Raka. who says many students shy away from taking maths, basically due to not having good, inspiring teachers at school level itself. Hence, coaching classes mushroom up. Do
Yes,
you want
that's a
to
comment.
comment? Yeah, it's a comment.
Yeah.
Shivrani, do you want to, Shivrani, just speak up if maybe that's convenient?
Yeah, it was very nice talk, Jayasree. This was a lot of numbers and it was quite disturbing, like as Preeti said. So I was thinking like this large differences what we see in the IMO and the JE performance of girls. I feel competition is the main thing. I feel women or girls, like as you said, even in the later phase during discussions, women wouldn't come up with questions, but men would just bluff. That's what you said. So it starts at a very early age where we feel that girls are not up to, they want really this cutthroat competition, what you say. Is there a, I feel if there is a way to measure performance, not just mere competition, but in some other way, would really bring up women. That's my thought.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we need to really, I mean, I think we have to really ask this question as to, I mean, what is right about your assessment if it is not actually, I mean, why are girls not there? I mean, if something must be the problem with your assessment if it is not producing equal number of girls. I mean, comparably equal number of girls. I'm not saying that, it should be 50-50. I mean, they actually talk about the 40-60, like, within, I mean, the gender parity, like you try, kind of, sometimes there are 60% girls and 40% boys or whatever. I mean, like, I mean, let's be more inclusive and let's say that, I'm also actually slipping into the binary, and which is actually definitely very, very problematic. You need to have representation across, different this thing, and that we need to actually answer. I mean, what is wrong with your assessment? Why is it that it is not actually? Why is it that girls are not doing well? I mean, they have to take some responsibility for it. Those who are setting up these tests, they need to actually answer as to what is it that they're doing. How is it that it's actually? I mean, this is just not okay. That it should. I mean, I'm saying that. I mean, it's not okay for men to actually appropriate all the space. I'm saying that there actually a certain section of men have appropriated the whole space for themselves. Overrepresented. They have taken something. Their share is something that they have no right to have actually. Yeah, wrongfully. Or, So I would say that, I mean, they really have to really think about, why are so many of us here? Why don't we actually share it?
Yeah. Well, continuing on Shivrani's point, I mean, do you agree that it's this very aggressive, competitive atmosphere in our institutes, which kind of basically puts off, women students and
isn't that true? I mean, as people who have actually been inside, we do see that, we learn a lot of things later in life. People like me, I studied in ordinary kind of schools. And I realized that, when I went for higher education, so many things that I did not learn, I filled up those holes. And that, I think, should be the experience of many of us. Because, no matter how rich, no matter how much you pay as your school fee, getting quality mathematics education is quite a challenge in this country. Most of the children actually come out of school without knowing many things. Actually, they're all there in the textbook. When you look, you go back and look at the textbook. Oh, yeah, this was there in the 7th class textbook itself, but then I did not learn it. I did not know it, and I went to one of the best schools. I mean, you may have gone to a good school also, but you don't necessarily learn things well. And therefore, I think that, this massive, competition, we must definitely evolve alternative strategies. And that cannot happen unless many of us speak up.
Right. Yeah. So I have a question here from Ravi. For some reason, he is not able to ask this directly. So let me ask on his behalf. So Ravi says, thanks for the great talk. I have a general question concerning the representation of men and women in science. We know that the top R&D institutions in India are overrepresented by well-to-do upper-class Hindu males. Are there related studies on the representation of women in academia in terms of their caste or religious background? And my main question is, how can gender studies inform and address such glaring lack of diversity?
See, I mean, that I have not really, the data, actual empirical study that I carried out is 20 years old. I mean, that I hope that nothing that I said there is any more true, and things have changed. I hope that things have changed. But when I went to collect data, I asked, don't you think that we should have reservation for women in academia, right? And most of the women refused to entertain that. They said they were quite against reservation because they are actually dominant caste, women from dominant caste background. And they do not want reservation because they actually told me that if we ask for reservation for women in science, then that will justify reservation for SC/STs in higher education and employment, which they were against. And similarly, also they tried to actually hide their caste and tell me, when I asked them, which caste background do you belong to? Many of them gave me, what I'm trying to say is that, this act of, women may be very concerned about the fact that women are underrepresented, but then they're not necessarily particularly, bothered about the fact that, others are underrepresented. And unless we actually understand that, my merit is not recognized, my ability is not recognized by certain section, the same section is also not recognizing the ability in somebody else also. Unless we build some kind of a solidarity across the excluded sections and work together, we are not going anywhere. We really need to. I don't think that. That's why I really want to insist. I want to say that. There is no gender question which does not take into account other questions also. That question will get nowhere.
Right. Yeah. So Aniket Sule has a question. Aniket, do you want to speak yourself? I can read the question.
Thanks for the talk. So my question was that what you said is correct, that empirically we know that assessment creates an unequal field. But are there any studies which show this with evidence that the way we assess our students is creating unequal field?
In India, we do not have too many studies, no. We are not. If we are looking at educational domain, there are some studies here and there. Nothing that is significantly. I do not have anything that I can. I have looked at from which I can say. There are some studies, which are kind of, I would say, a little bit, very quantitative sometimes. Very. This is. I want to also say that studies have to be instituted by the state with the intention of using the studies. We don't have that. We are taking up a study. I may take up a study because, I have to publish a paper, right? I need to publish something. So what do? I need to take up a problem. So what is a problem that I can take? Okay, gender is a problem that I could take. I could try and go to the nearby school and try and, study a few, and publish it somewhere. And nobody will read that. No, not even, forget about nobody reading it. Nobody is interested in that. The state is not interested in this question. State is not confronting the question. If education is being funded by the state, new education policy, does it ever actually talk about any of these issues? It's simply kind of, pushed it to one little small corner, completely. It should talk. Why is that not a concern of national education policy? To, achieve, say, parity, caste-based, gender-based, why? That should be, right? Equal right for all sections of the society ought to be there. It's a state, after all. There's no such thing. The gains that we made before have been lost in the new education policy. Yeah.
Any more questions? Please raise your hand and maybe just unmute yourself and ask directly.
I have a question, Preeti.
Yes.
Yeah.
Please go ahead.
Hi. So this study has been done for mathematics. Has it been done for, say, other fields, like, for example, the ability of languages amongst the genders, studies like that?
Yeah, I think I have not really looked at very carefully to because constant reference is that girls are better at verbal abilities and boys are better at mathematics, kind of a thing. So there is definitely a gender factor coming in also in the being able to do learn languages. But I have not looked at that. I mean, somebody who's looking at language probably should be able to answer. I have not looked at that. But yeah, maybe maybe one should just take a look at try and Google Scholar is a good place to dig for literature.
Yeah, thank you. The talk was very nice. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Girls are ahead in life sciences.
Yes.
Are they? I mean, have they crossed the 33% mark in life sciences? Have they life sciences? I mean, do we have 50%? Girls are there in I think they're doing well. I mean, at the undergraduate and postgraduate this thing, there are more girls than boys. But then, but faculty, I think it was still 33%.
Yeah.
1/3.
Yeah. So Rajguru, you have your hand raised. Do you want?
Yeah. Sorry. We have Rajwal. We have 50.
I don't think in the faculty members just a few.
That's where. Yeah. UGC all sciences close to 50%.
So Rajguru, did you want to ask a question?
Just a question. Very interesting talk, Jayasree. I'm just wondering, is there a role of teaching, the way they teach maths? Does it introduce a kind of a bias? It makes this gender parity issue even worse?
Yeah, it must be because, I was once in a home science college. I mean, there's this home science college in Delhi, which also offers a BLEd. So I went there to talk once. And the students, it was actually meant for girls. I mean, and the BLEd course is actually only given to girls. I mean, it's not offered to boys, men. So you can't really do a BLEd if you happen to be a man. This is really strange. The whole class of 50 girls, maybe, they said that, they were told when they were in school that, listen, don't even aspire to think of doing something like mathematics. It's not for you. Girls can't do math. I was shocked. I mean, teaching is the next level. If the teacher begins by telling you that you cannot do mathematics, then what kind of an attention are you going to get? Again, anecdotal. We do not have proper data, so anecdotal. Once I was traveling in a bus in Bangalore, and there was this little girl sitting next to me, and I was just chatting with her and asking what subject you like, and she said something. I said, don't you like mathematics? She said, no. I said, why? And so on. And then after a while, she says that, my maths teacher, who happens to be a female teacher, she likes only boys. She only talks to boys. She never looks at us. She never talks to us. So I don't like math. Yeah. So there is, I think, a lot of such things. No, I mean, the fact that they are only sending boys to write the RMO or the pre-RMO tests, only boys. No, they must be going only in large number. Only boys are going. That already tells us that surely gender bias exists. But we are not studying. We need to really study.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Rajul, did you want to ask something else?
No. Right. Just to add to it, is there a kind of research where they experimented with, different ways of teaching, and where
in the West, yes.
Yeah.
In the West, some, yeah.
Okay.
Definitely, they made classrooms more kind of cooperative. They try to reduce this. They try to make teachers more sensitive to the gender difference. Yeah. The girls don't ask questions. Bias operates from men and women. Once I was taking a workshop for teachers, and my team member, who's a male team member, he told me that you are giving more attention to male teachers than female teachers. So knowing, being a feminist does not somehow automatically change me too. I also respond to the kind of, so I need to be conscious of the fact that I could do that. I need to really, need to tell myself again and again. And the feedback was very, very, very helpful for me. Then, I started being a little bit more conscious. And those efforts should be made. And, teachers, having 2 teachers in the class, and, somebody are asking for feedback from students and things like that.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Very nice. Ruby, you have your hand raised up.
Am I audible, Preeti?
Yes.
So actually, while talking about teachers and, about the situation, so one incident came in my mind, which is always there. So it's about, say, like after 10th, we had to change the school. So we had to go to, little a next stop, bus stop, Wala school. And then, so I took science. And so I had like third position in this 10th marks, and first two were boys. So there was some prize ceremony in my 10th school in my village. So we all went there. So a teacher comes and he asked these two boys, so which school you have joined, and you must have taken science. So that was like fine. And he comes to me and he just simply says that, so you have taken arts, right? So I didn't have in Bengali medium what this gender biasness or anything, but that stuck, like it is still there, that okay, so first time I heard something and I was like, it was like third who is like they're saying like, okay, you have taken arts, but I had just 1% less marks than them, nothing, and not much different. So what was there? So they both are boys, and I'm the first girl, but that's in third position. So that remain with me, that how can, like at that situation with sufficient marks, still like teachers are discriminating in like 10th, 12th situation. And it's almost 60 or 70 students, right? So in our school, like it's not like girls are less. So almost 50-50, we have like boys and girls. Still there are discrimination. So in 1 to 10th roll number, we have 3 boys and 7 girls, but still they would think in this way. So yeah, teachers have sufficient contribution, and for this.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when I was a PhD student, one of my co-PhD students, I mean, once she told me that, when she asked a faculty member for recommendation to attend a summer school somewhere, she said that the faculty member whom she asked, asked her, oh, so you want to go do some shopping and all that, is it? Whereas he was very readily, he actually persuaded a student who have kind of not been giving exams, been failing over a period of time, a male student, pushing him to actually go for the summer school. So this kind of biases are so, I mean, there is no check, there's nobody who can ask, like this, no accountability for us. I mean, people can get away with it. But I also want to say that, like just you shared this experience, a friend of mine, a Muslim mathematics student, we were students together. He went to the administrative department asking for some information. So they asked him, okay, what's your name? He said whatever his name is, which is clearly indicating his religion. So this man looked at the whole list and said, but your name is not there. He said, what do you mean my name is not there? I am a student enrolled here. He said, no, it's not there. And he showed him the Urdu department data. So he takes it for granted that because he's a Muslim, he ought to be studying Urdu and not mathematics. So bias exists in so many ways. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know when we are going to start doing something about it.
Yeah. Are there more questions? I think I'll wait. Yeah, Aruna wants to ask. Yeah, please go ahead, Aruna.
Very nice talk. I just want to ask one thing. What is your personal opinion about having reservations for women? Actually, we have this certain programs for empowering women, like for example, DST projects where it is relaxation for women, etc. But if you are talking about keeping reservations for women, so does this mean like it will dilute the
Can't hear you,
feelings, etc.?
I can't hear.
Aruna, I think, can you repeat the last part?
No, I just want to know your personal, feelings about having reservations for women, and like in the sense like if you keep reservation, then will it dilute the competitive feelings? Like,
I mean,
will it
reservation.
dilute the competitor?
I mean that the feeling of competition. Like, okay,
will it dilute the feeling of
we really want to compete and get it. We don't want to get something because it is reserved for us. That feeling.
I mean, it's not like that, no, for anybody. I mean, it's not, nobody is, if you look at if you look at narratives from students who actually come in under reservation, the kind of ridicule that they face, the kind of, so I don't think that, just because you're coming in under reservation, you got why is it we are asking for reservation? There's a major underrepresentation. What is the implication of underrepresentation for us? That what it means to be actually sitting alone and doing your mathematics all by yourself, there isn't another person to talk to. Or that the only time that, if you talk to is, sit with men and talk to them. And that time, most of the time it happens that, they are more interested in you maybe than in the mathematics that you want to discuss. Because, these are real things. In research institutions, we know that the fewer girls there are, they are going to constantly face, not just that they are not going to have somebody to talk to, they are also having to deal with the continuous, male attention that they have on them, one after another, you have suitors coming to you, and that you have to ward them off. That's one main job that you have to do. And that when you go and sit with them to discuss mathematics, how do you really get to know much? It's much better to have more women actually, after all. It's so isolating. I was very, very scared today. Talking like this, but then when I finished my master's, I studied in girls' school and girls' college, and when I went to Indian Statistical Institute for my PhD, the whole department, it was a male space, all important men. I felt like a complete kind of a thing. I just kind of shrunk in. They say also to me, like, Jayasree, you just look so different. When you came in, you just kind of fit into some little hole. Like, I was just completely couldn't ever stand in front of any of them. They all looked like gods, super gods. Nobody to talk to. I couldn't go and sit with men and talk so very easily. I'm sure things have changed now. Men and women interact far more easily today than when I was a student. But still, I think it's extremely important to have not just reservation for women, but reservation for all. Reservation is not just not the best solution, but I think it is still better than not even having reservation.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Do we have more questions? I think I just want to, Prajwal is saying, Prajwal, do you want to speak?
Not sure, but because this is a long discussion, but I just wanted to say that essentially the reservations that are in place are a cop-out because they are an admission effectively by the existing cohort, which is the privileged class, that they have not been able to step back from the privilege and make education accessible to all. It's effectively that. We may not say it that way, but effectively it's an admission.
Absolutely.
And in the case of gender or even going forward with other dimensions like caste and all that, I think the impact of feminist studies of science and so on has been fairly significant. And so now there are tools. There is both knowledge, like the statistics you presented, and there are tools to address the biases within. There may not be as much acknowledgement as we would like, but there is beginning to be acknowledgement. So I'm still hopeful that we will tackle the root cause rather than having to be, forced into a cop-out.
Yeah, even the universities abroad actually have affirmative action after all. One hasn't been able to deal with the gender question without affirmative action. And there are several factors operating. At one level, you are 28, you're 20, you just finished your PhD, you're 29, you're just married, and that there's pressure on you to actually move out of your area and go and live with this gentleman who cannot cook for himself, and that you need to take care of him. And so you need to change your discipline. And so you're going to get into a new area of research, and that you're not going to publish for the next 2-3 years. And then you're going to have a baby. I mean, just imagine, what it means for a woman to actually, get into a faculty position. I mean, the one clear reason why there are so few women is because of all these things. We all know it. 28 to 35 is a time they have any chance of getting a job. And that's also the time they have to also get married. They also have to have babies. I mean, how many things can they do? Adjust to a new setup. How can they do all this? I mean, we don't really, it's really shocking. I mean, I said this to one of our friends, but then I'll say it in public here. A young lady I met very recently told me that a husband who is actually a pass out from an IIT, who's a PhD from an IIT, these people are Brahmins, and that, they have this menstrual taboo, etc., etc. And this man, when she has her periods, she's made to sit away for 3 days, and he doesn't cook for her. He just goes away. I mean, just can you imagine anybody doing this? I mean, this is so much an entitlement for a man that, he will not cook. And you can't do that. If he will not cook, then you have to cook. You have to care for the baby. If he will not feed the baby, you'll have to feed the baby. You'll have to clean the baby. How do you cope with all this? So very few super women are there who can do all this. I mean, I don't want to be a superwoman. I want to be just an ordinary person.
Yes. There's a question by Manoj.
Hi, Jayasree. I just want to ask. So, see, our notions of gender certainly affects the practice of maths or science, or even the culture of it. When you continue the practice for a sufficiently long time, it gets accumulated. But I was just wondering, are there any studies which shows that it has affected the content in mathematics? I'm asking you this because, see, in biological sciences, this has been shown. For example, in zoology and botany, this has been shown, adequately. But I was just wondering, there are fewer such studies in physical science and mathematics. So my question is specifically to mathematics. Are you aware of any such studies where our notions about gender and at that particular time affecting the content of
Thanks for asking this question, Manoj. Thank you very much for asking this question. I did not want to touch this because this is pretty difficult a question. As a student of mathematics, till I went to Eklavya and started my work in education, I did not ask why mathematics has to be axiomatic. It was axiomatic that mathematics has to be axiomatic. But then, having moved into education, I actually got to know more about other things. And people like Gubirathan D'Ambrosio, who actually talk about ethnomathematics and then looking at the history of mathematics, one also feels more and more that there is no one mathematics. And I think I'm not saying that there is something called female mathematics, male mathematics, and transgender mathematics. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that there is nothing so great about axiomatic mathematics that somebody wants to pursue, where one learns about schemes and sheaves and and so on and so forth, and do algebraic geometry, which only gods can do. We might not. Most of us may have no interest in being gods. We may be interested in doing so many other things, and that they may be very, very valuable. For example, not just for women, for a whole lot of people, learning to engage with the mathematics that actually affects our real world, the world in which we live. That's something that most of us know nothing about. There is, because that's something that's not taught to us. We are taught abstract. If you actually reduce it and give an equation to me, then I can really solve it. But then I will not. Our great mathematician. I'm not getting his name, the one who found Ramanujan. It says, that mathematicians are not interested in applications. We do mathematics because mathematics is beautiful. We are not interested in applications. We are not bothered about who can apply mathematics or not. So we are doing it for the aesthetic value of it, for the beauty of it, for the fact that we can actually prove a certain theorem and that we have understood it. It gives us intellectual satisfaction, emotional satisfaction, it gives everything else. We are not interested in application. So when an application situation comes, then we have nothing to say. And as a person who is right now teaching linear algebra to mechanical engineers and electrical engineers, when I talk about eigenvalues and eigenvectors and so on and so forth, I know that it doesn't mean anything to them because I do not know how to speak about it in their language, and they do not know how to actually ask their questions to me. And so there is I'm teaching pure mathematics to them, and they will never use it, I think. I mean, later on, when they will actually ever apply mathematics, they will probably learn it differently. Then they will say, oh yeah, this is what she was trying to say when she was talking about eigenvalues, is it? Right? So, we really need to look at curriculum, and there is a good bit of work that's going on is in the math education community, not again in India, but elsewhere, which looks at, how to actually redefine school curriculum in a way. I mean, for example, one small experiment that I did when I was at Tata Institute of Social Sciences, when I was to teach, Tata Institute of Social Sciences doesn't have it anymore, BA Social Sciences program. And so they had to have one paper in science and one paper in mathematics. So, I mean, most of them are very, very scared of math. Obviously, they ran away from mathematics and they went into social sciences. So, first day, they will all be in tears and say, oh, I'm so scared of math. We designed another course for them, so another course called Math Appreciation. And that course I could design only because, I had read other people like, Paul Ernest, who actually ask questions about, what we teach in school and why we teach what we teach and what else could be there as part of school curriculum. And one of the things that struck me is that who decides that when we teach mathematics, we only teach, content. And, mathematics is very peculiar because whatever you teach in school is always adult mathematics. There is nothing like, baby stuff that you teach. When you teach division algorithm in class 5, that division algorithm is what you are going to use when you go to your grave also. Right? The same stuff. When you learn to factorize polynomials in class 7, the same thing that you are going to. There's nothing that this child stuff, there is nothing like a child's mathematics. It's just less mathematics, but then it is the same mathematics. If you learn column operations in class 2, you are going to live with it for all your life. Right? So there's something very peculiar about mathematics. Science is not like that. I mean, physics that you learn, the concepts that you're giving are more expository in nature. You learn less of it. And then as you grow, when you go to learn light, when you go to do your BSc, then you understand light better than all those little experiments that you did when you were in school, with something. Right? There's one, the school science probably is more expository in nature, but school mathematics is not expository in nature. It's actually full final stuff that we teach. So how do we reformulate school curriculum in such a way that it can be more, useful for a whole lot of learners? And should we actually also include, say, for example, does learning mathematics also include history of mathematics? Why should I? I mean, who can pursue history of mathematics? If one does not know much mathematics, can I kind of combine as part of my learning of mathematics some other aspects around mathematics? Say recreational mathematics. Can that be part of school curriculum? Or mathematics to understand the society that we are living in? Why are they not part of even school curriculum? Forget about research that you will do later on, where you are only going to do mathematics for the beauty or whatever. At least at the school level, why are we not taught mathematics that is that has larger applications? Rather than always factorizing polynomials, maybe we could do something else also. These are questions one could ask. I have written one paper, which I don't know how many people have read. It's published. And will one mathematics do for all? Some such thing. Can one have one mathematics for all in a multilingual, multicultural country like India? Should we not have multiple forms of mathematics at the school level? How to realize it, a different question. At the level of idea, if we are willing to engage with this idea, then we will try and experiment, do small level things and try and experiment and see how things can be changed. What can, at least we will reject this idea.
Yeah. Oh, that's excellent, Jayasree. So are there any more questions? This idea of more than one way of doing mathematics, I think this is definitely applicable also to physics. And I think we need to just make this, Yeah, that's the democratization of science, right? So you have to make it accessible
Right.
to
Surely.
everyone. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Are there any more questions for Jayasree? Comments? Feel free to unmute and speak. I don't see any raised hands.
I think I should be able to see all of you. I should just get out of the screen and see. I'm not seeing anybody.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So, and I think Geeta Chadha has shared an interesting article in the chat window. So, I encourage everybody to open that and read it. Okay. I think since it's 5:48. Oh yeah. Okay. Prajwal has a comment. Yes, Prajwal.
No, I just wanted to add to what Jayasree was saying earlier. Jayasree was talking about how, women are still burdened, discriminatory societal burdens and so on. That is true, but the data, at least for physics, the data show that that's not the whole story. Even from the framework of this burden thing, what happens within the profession is that whether or not you are burdened in your family, whether or not you are in an equitable family relationship, it is assumed that you will compromise on your professional responsibilities. So if you are in a long-term relationship, it is assumed that you will give your family higher priority. If you have children, though, it is even more so. It is assumed. So this is in a sense, a bigger problem that the profession should address. If we put all the blame on societal discrimination, then there is a tendency to sit back and say, okay, let's solve that first, and let's not do anything within the profession. Which to my mind, that's not the right approach, because there is still huge amount of barriers which are created within the profession, which we can do something about.
Surely within the profession, surely scientists have told that male scientists have said that if they have babies, they are not expected to go back and take care of the babies. They are expected to be in the labs. Whereas if women actually, I had a young colleague who came after her baby was born. She left the baby and she came home. With so many of my other male colleagues said, "See, look at her, how so cruel. She just left the baby and she came here for the conference. Breastfeeding baby, how could she leave?" She said, "See, the baby, I have no milk to feed the baby, and so I could come." You are also worried about her. This is very, very difficult. Yeah, this is true. Absolutely true. Very true. The norm is that the discipline, the male is what kind of male? A male who will have somebody to take care of his clothes, food, everything, who can actually simply devote 20 out of that 20 or 18 hours of a day for science. That's a normal scientist. And such a scientist, a woman can become such a scientist only if she can find somebody else who can do all this that women do for men. And that's a very unfair kind of a thing. A typical almost every scientist, in fact, more male scientists are married than female scientists. Our data, at least my data, at least said that there were more women who opt not to marry within science. And so, if a typical male scientist is actually a married man, then you ought to be actually asked to, you can't devote all your time only for science, because you have a family, you have a wife, you have children to look after. You've taken the responsibility. You cannot abdicate your responsibility. That's criminal. No profession can demand that of us. Should not demand that of us. And that we, as men and women in this space, we need to say this again and again. And that's what I don't know. That's what I would like to say.
But what you just described, the scary thing is, I have heard those comments about myself, about leaving the baby, etc. And my age people today are hiring faculty. They are in decision-making bodies. Those very people who made those comments are in decision-making bodies. So that is the scary thing.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, I think on that note, I think we should now probably close. So thank you so much, Jayasree, for this very
Thank you.
exciting,
It was
interesting
really
discussion. I
pleasure.
think we're going to look at the references you have circulated, and I think we'll try to see how we can make connections between mathematics and astrophysics, and do things together to improve the place.
Yeah, sure. That'll be nice.
Yeah. Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you for the
Jayasree.
opportunity.
It was a pleasure. Thank you. Okay, I'll close now. Bye, everyone.
Bye bye.